Hey there folks, it's Blue here at Bluebears Games, and today's video will be the upgrade guide for the Planeswalker Party Commander Precon from the Commander Master set that was released in August of 2023. Before I get to today's video, I want to first take a moment to let you know that if you'd like to help support my channel, you can do so in the following ways. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, share any of my content on your socials so other people can discover it, and or watch some of my many other videos yourself. In addition to that, if you're interested in ways that you can help support my channel monetarily, please read the description of this video, and there you will find a myriad of options for what you can do to help me keep this channel going. Anything that you can do to help is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for it. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. For this guide, I will once again give some suggestions on not only what I would add to make this deck play a little better, but also on what I would take out as well. The first thing that I will suggest is a 1-for-1 commander swap from Commodore Guff to Narset Enlightened Master. Yes, Narset costs a little more to cast, but her ability that allows you to cast non-creature spells from the top of your library for free just for simply attacking is just way more useful than what Commodore Guff can do, and is more deserving of being in the command zone so you have access to her. On top of that, Narset having built-in protection from spot removal is also a very nice bonus that just adds to the reason for this change. Now, let's look at the cards I believe should actually be removed. Once again, this precon has way too many mana sources. In fact, over half of the deck was dedicated to mana sources between the lands, the mana rocks, and creatures that fetch lands for you. I get that without mana you can't do anything, but damn, that's just way too much. When more than half of your cards do nothing but help add mana, then that means you're going to get stuck being able to cast anything you want, but have nothing to actually cast more often than not. Because of this, I would take out 1 island, 1 mountain, 1 plains, Exotic Orchard, Izzet Signet, Boros Signet, Azorius Signet, and Gatewatch Beacon. The Signets are more mana fixing than ramp anyway, so they won't be missed, and the Beacon does more than just add mana, but nothing that's too game breaking, so I'll be replacing it with something that's way better shortly. After that, I'd remove Spark Shaper Visionary, Deep Glow Skate, Guff Rewrites History, Blasphemous Act, and Oath of Jace because they just aren't that good. None of them do anything that great to advance the Planeswalker theme, and there are just too many cards out there that do, that deserve a spot in this deck. Lastly, I mentioned in the unboxing video that the selection of actual Planeswalkers in the box were a little subpar, so I'd remove the following 5 walkers to make room for some better ones. Jace Mirror Mage, Jace Architect of Thought, Vranos Masked Inquisitor, Gideon Jorah, and Narset of the Ancient Ways. These 5 Planeswalkers specifically were, in my opinion, the ones that did the least to advance the theme of the deck. So that's 18 cards in total that I'd remove, so now we have to replace them, right? Let me show you what I believe would be much better options to help take this deck to the next level. I'll start this off with a utility land that I mentioned in the unboxing video, Rogue's Passage. With the commander being changed to Narset, this is a no-brainer. While Narset has built-in protection, she does not have any evasion, so this will help make it easier to keep her alive while getting her attack triggers in. Next, I'll show you 3 creatures that this deck sorely needs. The first one is a card that I'll probably butcher the name, but it's Lyzel Vlaakith's Champion. Since Planeswalkers use counters, Lyzel is just a no-brainer to add as well. The lack of green in this deck limits our options of adding additional counters, and this is one of the few options available in these colors. The second creature is Monastery Mentor. One of the weaknesses of a Super Friends deck is the lack of creatures, so having stuff that creates tokens to help you block incoming attacks will be helpful. The fact that it makes tokens with prowess is also helpful if you need to use them as a form of offense as well. And finally, the third creature that I'll suggest is Kaikar Wind's Fury. This is for the same reason as Monastery Mentor, except Kaikar actually creates flying tokens, which are sorely needed to help plug up a huge weakness, which is the lack of not just creatures, but flying creatures specifically. The next 3 cards that I'll suggest are sorceries with similar effects of wiping the board of creatures. These suggestions are in direct response to the removal of Blasphemous Act, which isn't a true board wipe. Board wipes come in many different forms, each with pluses and minuses, so you could choose any that you think will benefit you the most, but the ones I believe would be the most beneficial for this deck are Wrath of God, Farewell, and Supreme Verdict. An argument can be made that Hour of Reckoning could be used too, since most of your creatures will probably be tokens, but 7 mana is a lot if you don't have many creatures on the board to help you convoke it. Next up, I want to show you 4 artifacts that will help this theme out immensely. First up is a card that I was alluding to in the unboxing, but I couldn't remember its name. It's called Crawl Space, and is a great card to help keep you alive if you don't have a lot of creatures. It's not as similar to Silent Arbiter as I had thought, but it is damn close. Both of them limit how many creatures can be used in combat, which is a pretty good thing for a deck like this. The next 2 artifacts are quite similar to each other in both ability and name. They are Contagion Engine and Contagion Clasp. Anybody who has used or has been victim to an Atraxa Praetor's Voice deck knows how powerful the Proliferate mechanic can be, especially when used with Planeswalkers, and of course Poison, but that's not the direction this deck is going in. The quicker you can get to an ultimate of a Planeswalker, the better off you will be, usually, so repeatable Proliferate effects just make sense to add. They both also have a form of removal using -1/-1 counters, but that's just a bonus and not the focus here. The 4th and final artifact is called Ichor Moon Gauntlet, and for a Super Friends theme, it's one of the better ones that you can use in my opinion. If the situation is right, this, along with a bunch of Planeswalkers on your board, could result in infinite turns, since it grants all of your walkers these abilities. I tried finding another card in the game that could do something similar, and I could not. This is a unique card that could end up being quite powerful in any Super Friends themed deck, as long as you have access to blue. Now let's talk about the most important cards for this deck, the Planeswalkers. I was able to pinpoint 6 that would be pure upgrades. They are Tezzeret Artifice Master, because this deck sorely needed to be able to create flying creatures. Tamiyo the Moon Sage, solely for that ultimate, but the card draw is helpful too. Teferi Temporal Archmage, for pretty much the same reason as Tamiyo. The ultimate is really good, but the quasi card draw is pretty good as well. Teferi Temporal Pilgrim, because this Teferi can actually be offensive as well as defensive, thanks to how beefy those creature tokens can get. Narset Transcendent, because this is the Planeswalker version of Narset that should have been included in the box instead of the inferior version that was. And finally, Quintarius Canned, because it provides a possible way to win, defense with the tokens that it creates, and ways to cast stuff for free for you. Quintarius actually does quite a lot that you want, and would be a great addition to this deck. It's much better than any that I suggested to take out. Finally, we come to the combo part of this guide. For this deck, I wanted something that involved the Planeswalkers as much as possible, and what I came up with did just that perfectly. It starts with Teferi, who slows the sunset. To get this combo to work, you will focus on the +1 ability that untaps permanents for you. The second card for this combo is the Chain Veil. You're going to be using Teferi's first loyalty ability to untap the Chain Veil over and over to get infinite loyalty activations for all of your Planeswalkers in play. The catch is that you need access to 4 mana each time you activate the Chain Veil. There are a couple of ways that you can do this, and the neat part is that if you can somehow produce 5 or more mana in between each activation, you'll actually end up producing infinite mana as well. I'll tell you the steps for this combo with the assumption that you can produce the 4 mana needed first, and then I'll show you a pretty easy way that you can produce the mana needed. This combo requires Teferi, who slows the sunset, and the Chain Veil to be on the battlefield. You also must control any combination of a creature, land, and/or Planeswalker with a positive loyalty ability that adds mana to your mana pool, and these combined must be able to produce at least 4 mana. The steps for this combo are as follows. Step 1. Activate the Chain Veil, which will give all of your walkers an additional loyalty activation for the turn. This affects both Planeswalkers you currently control on the board, and any that may enter play later as well. Step 2. Activate Teferi's first loyalty ability, untapping the Chain Veil, a creature, and a land, then you will gain 2 life. Step 3. Produce 4 mana in the method that I will explain in just a bit. Step 4. Activate the Chain Veil again by paying the 4 mana that you just created and tapping it. Now you can activate loyalty abilities of your Planeswalkers up to 3 times this turn. Step 5 is to repeat steps 1 through 4, which will result in infinite activations of loyalty abilities of all Planeswalkers that you control, infinite life gain triggers, and infinite mana if you have a way to produce 5 or more mana in between each Teferi activation. Now, to do all of that, you need to know how to produce the 4 required mana to activate the Chain Veil for each cycle. Well, the most obvious is to have a land and a creature in play that combined can create at least 4 mana. I don't really see that being easy in a deck that doesn't have access to green, and the one land that can do it on its own, Scorched Ruins, is an almost $50 reserve list card. So instead, let's take a look at a Planeswalker that came in the box, Chandra, Legacy of Fire. This version of Chandra has a positive loyalty ability that says to add a red mana for each Planeswalker that you control. With this Chandra, plus the Teferi, you simply need 2 other Planeswalkers in play, and you've got your 4 mana right there. If you happen to have any additional walkers beyond 4 in play, you can now also create infinite red mana. There are also other versions of Chandra that together could also give you the 4 mana needed as well, using a positive loyalty ability, but Chandra Legacy of Fire was already in the box, so no need to make any additional changes. How you use this combo to win will rely entirely on what other Planeswalkers you have in play, so the results may vary wildly and create some very interesting wins for you. The most straightforward way, though, is with Chandra Awakened Inferno's +1 loyalty ability if you have that Chandra in play. And that, my fellow Spellslingers, was my upgrade guide for the Commander Master's Planeswalker Party Commander Precon. While everything that I suggested will not make this precon a top-tier competitive EDH deck, it will make it better overall and a hell of a lot more fun to pilot. We all know, or at least should know, that the Queen Commander for all things dealing with counters is Atraxa, but Narset, who I highly recommend as the commander for this deck, is not a bad option for a more budget-friendly build. The choices for Planeswalkers in this color pairing are a little weaker than if Atraxa was the general, but that just means that the 2 decks should play differently, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. If anything, this is more about having fun rather than just straight up winning, which I'll always recommend more. Well folks, that's it for this upgrade guide. Let me know what you think of the changes that I've suggested in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching. Now go and watch some of my many other videos to tide you over until next week's video drops.